Welcome to Inside Pitch. I'm Lynn Worthy alongside Cardinals beat writer Daniel Guerrero. The baseball season is over. Runway season's finally ended. Daniel, what did you feel like were the big takeaways from the end of the regular season? Obviously, the Cardinals took it on the chin a little bit in Chicago, but overall, where do you feel like you stand coming out of the season?
Yeah, I mean, this was going to be a year where the Cardinals had talked about it being a transition with the incoming change in the front office, with Chaim Bloom set to take over as president of baseball operations, with John Mozeliak leaving. And, ownership had talked about this being a year for some of the young guys to grow and develop at the major league level. And I think we saw some of that in some cases, right, where you look at Brendan Donovan obviously becoming an all-star. You look at what Alec Burleson did once he got consistent at-bats in the lineup, whether he was playing first, DH, or in one of the corner outfield spots. And you also look at Ivan Herrera, who starts the year as the Cardinals' opening day catcher, has a couple of leg injuries with the left knee bone bruise, and he has the left hamstring strain, and then is set up in a DH role, but still performs as one of the Cardinals' best hitters when you look at the baseball card stats, and you also look at kind of those underlying metrics, right, with the hard hit data and some of those things that you really look for in a hitter. So, I mean, there were some signs there of guys in the lineup taking steps forward. You look at the bullpen where there was some change after the trade deadline, where the Cardinals sent 3 of their key veteran relievers out, and you have guys like Riley O'Brien, who kind of steps up a little bit there at the end, who shows he can handle some late inning opportunities. You look at what Matt Swanson did in growing in that role, where he was pitching kind of that down big guy early on in the year, giving multiples and, riding that Memphis shuttle a little bit, but then he comes up in the second half and is really kind of shows that, he can be a guy who can handle multiples, who can pitch in those late innings. So, I mean, there were some positives there of steps forward and kind of learning about guys, but there were also still some questions left, right? Where when you look at guys like Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker, where they had some bright stretches, but they also had some rough patches. You look at the rotation where there's a little bit of, I guess, a lot of questions because you don't really have a lot of guys coming back. Kyle Leahy could be an option. He was another guy who stepped forward. He will be competing for a starting rotation spot next spring. But yeah, I mean, there were some questions answered, some questions still left unanswered as we head into the winter and new front office, and we'll kind of see where they take it from here.
Yes, definitely questions that were still, you got some answers. There's some questions that are still lingering, and as you mentioned, there'll be different people sort of in charge of sorting through those questions. Obviously, since the end of the regular season, we've heard from both outgoing president of baseball operations, John Mozeliak, and the incoming president of baseball operations, Chaim Bloom. A lot of different things discussed, whether it was, Mozeliak's tenure, what Bloom's plans are. Coming out of those couple of press conferences, what were your big, major takeaways from just hearing from both guys and, the transition that you referenced?
Yeah, with Mozeliak, it very much felt kind of like a reflective, kind of closing the book on his tenure as Cardinals president of baseball operations. A little bit of time to reflect, some thank yous that he gave out to people he, worked closely with in the front office and the organization. And then you look at Chaim Bloom's press conference up there with Bill DeWitt Jr. and Bill DeWitt III talking about really where this organization's headed forward. And obviously there's still areas where they need to improve in to build, a club that's going to consistently contend for the postseason. There's still some questions about, what payroll is going to look like next year, how the free agent market will be handled. Chaim Bloom said yesterday that, the starting pitching market is an area that they may explore because they need depth. And obviously it's going to be one of those equations where you're going to want a guy, but one that's not going to be, kind of clogging up a lane for a young guy if the opportunity arises for a young player. You also heard a lot about the farm system yesterday and just kind of continuing to improve there, whether that's in staffing or in other areas. But it definitely feels like with Chaim Bloom kind of taking over as president of baseball ops, that the Cardinals are looking forward, looking to continuing to discover more about their young core, looking to try to find that balance of contending now and building forward. And there really isn't a timeline for that because you really don't know what how long it takes to build a consistent contender. I mean, we've seen other teams kind of have that young core arrive and then kind of take a step back. The Orioles kind of come to as an example. But I mean, it definitely feels like kind of turning the page and looking forward at kind of getting the Cardinals back to who they have been, you know, in the history of the organization.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where, you know, you mentioned the timeline. Chaim was purposefully avoiding the term rebuild. He talked about doing things long term, but he also talked about not conceding anything in the short term. In some ways, to me, that sort of sounded like a lot of the same as far as what we've heard in the past, but at the same time, I think there's going to be a long-term approach. One thing that we do know is that long-term approach, at least for the short term, includes Oli Marmol. So people who were speculating that they could be a managerial change, that's not happening. I don't think it's really a surprise to anybody who's been around. I don't want to speak for you, but I know for me, I felt like the fact that you know, the way they were making adjustments in the farm system included the coaching staff and Oli Marmol, the fact that they've been meeting with players, talking about the future, and Oli's been in part of those. So it's not a surprise, but for anybody who wondered about that, Oli will be back next season. The staffing questions are still to be sorted out. To me, I think that has more to do with guys who may have opportunities to go elsewhere, but we'll hear about those in the coming days. Aside from staffing, big things you're looking for, or maybe one or two big things that you're looking for this offseason? What's going to be on your agenda as far as keeping track of?
I guess it's just how the Cardinals navigate free agency and any potential trades, right? Bill DeWitt Jr. said yesterday that the payroll is unknown for what it's going to look like in 2026. Obviously, that would determine how the Cardinals are going to approach free agency this year, and especially a big free agency with a potential lockout looming ahead of the 2027 season when the CBA expires. So I think that is going to be one of the big storylines, right? You have multiple spots in the rotation that you need to fill. You have veteran players like Nolan Arenado and Sonny Gray who are candidates to be traded, even though they have full no-trade clauses, but they have expressed the desire to be on contending clubs. And obviously this is a club with the Cardinals that might be a ways away because of where they're at with kind of this young core that they're wanting to build up. So I think just how they navigate free agency and trades is going to be the big thing to watch for, because those are big contracts that would need to be unloaded. And this is Chaim Bloom's first winter as Cardinals president of baseball ops, so it'd be interesting to see how he navigates both of those things.
Yeah, and for me, I guess there's some behind-the-scenes things that I'm interested in. That's just, Chaim seemed to be hinting at there may be some things he wants to change internally. So whether that means reorganizing the front office, he felt like he wanted to keep the senior leadership. He said he's going to put the actual GM hire on hold, and that's to me that sounds like that could be after we see where the cards fall with shuffling, then he'll get to the GM thing. So that's going to be an interesting thing. It's more of a behind-the-scenes thing, but the fact that he's been here for a year plus already means that he's got that little bit of runway, if we want to still use that term, in terms of just being able to hit the ground running and make changes behind the scenes. So that'll be interesting to keep track of. Anyways, for Daniel, I'm Lynn Worthy. Thanks for joining us here on STLtoday.com, the digital edition of the Post-Dispatch. We'll touch on those topics and everything else in the pages of the paper and here online. Thanks for joining us.